All right, welcome to today's Explainer. If you are a regulated pharmacy professional here in Alberta, listen up, because the landscape of how you choose your leadership is about to undergo a massive structural shift. No exaggeration. Today, we're breaking down the historic new rules for the upcoming Alberta College of Pharmacy Council election. And while we're at it, we'll be objectively profiling one of the candidates running for Pharmacist Councillor 5, Ahmed Abdelfattah. We're going to dive right into his official campaign materials to see exactly how his own path as an internationally trained pharmacist directly shapes his platform.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, the 2026 election changes. Second, meeting Ahmed Abdelfattah. Third, looking at his province-wide practice experience. Fourth, his core commitments. And finally, number 5, how to actually cast your vote.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the 2026 election changes.
Look at this before and after. Before 2026, ACP council elections used this really rigid, district-based system. Basically, if you practiced in Edmonton, you only voted for Edmonton candidates. Calgary voted for Calgary, and so on. Pretty straightforward, right? But moving forward, those geographic boundaries are completely gone. We literally now have a unified, province-wide voting system where you can vote for any candidate in Alberta, regardless of where your actual pharmacy is located. So issues that span the entire province, like relief work standards or representation for internationally educated grads, those are now on everybody's ballot.
And honestly, what this means for voters is massive. As you can see from this official breakdown, every single regulated member, from clinical pharmacists in major urban hubs to pharmacy techs out in rural towns, now votes for both a pharmacist candidate and a pharmacy technician candidate across the entire province. For the very first time in the college's history, everyone is choosing their representatives together.
Now, keep the number 35 in mind. There are exactly 35 days of voting open for what is shaping up to be a highly competitive, newly unified race. You're going to be looking at a ballot featuring 7 running pharmacist candidates, but remember, you are only selecting individuals to fill 2 available positions.
Which brings us to Section 2, Meet Ahmed Abdelfattah. Let's jump into his candidate profile for Pharmacist Councillor 5.
Right front and center on his campaign materials, you'll see this phrase, the counselor who has stood behind your counter. Essentially, he is pitching himself as someone who intimately understands the daily, granular realities of frontline pharmacy practice, rather than just the administrative side of things. It really sets the stage for a platform that's deeply rooted in everyday operational challenges. Now, his platform is built on some solid credentials, for sure. We're talking a PharmD, an executive MBA, and additional prescribing authority. But what actually makes his profile stand out is his personal journey. He navigated the internationally trained pharmacist pathway himself, and he actually used that lived experience to successfully mentor other internationally educated pharmacists, achieving a literal 100% employment success rate. That firsthand knowledge of the IEPG journey, that's the absolute backbone of his campaign.
All right, moving on to Section 3, Province-Wide Practice Experience.
His background doesn't just sit in one neat little sector. It is incredibly diverse. It spans corporate chains, independent walk-in clinics, hospital cardiology and mental health, public health during COVID-19, and even the pharmaceutical industry. And this diverse array of practice is exactly what drives his key campaign proposals. Because he's experienced the friction points in all these different environments, his platform targets highly specific solutions, most notably his focus on portfolio-based documentation for relief workers and creating an IEPG Transparency Dashboard.
And check out this number. He has done relief practice across more than 10 different Alberta communities. We're talking everywhere from Lloydminster to Medicine Hat. This mix of urban and rural groundwork gives him a massive boost in credibility when he's asking to represent a newly unified province-wide voting base. He makes the case that this extensive travel is what allows him to truly grasp the wildly different needs across our province.
Okay, Section 4, the 4 commitments. So, what is he actually proposing?
While his materials lay out this broad 4-step plan, including a standardized walk-in clinic framework and a rural practice check on new policies, his campaign is heavily centered around 2 major transformative commitments. First, a total reform of the Continuing Competence Program, or CCP. He's arguing hard for flexible, portfolio-based documentation tailored specifically for the realities of relief and part-time pharmacists who just don't fit the traditional mold. Second, and this ties right back to his own background, he is championing the creation of an IEPG Transparency Dashboard. The goal here is to better support internationally trained pharmacists entering the workforce by bringing some much-needed clarity to their registration and integration process.
If you look at these campaign posters side by side, the thematic consistency is super clear.
The central message, "I practiced where you practice," serves as this visual anchor for his highly specific commitments to relief pharmacists and internationally educated grads. The design presents a platform leaning heavily on practical, structural changes for frontline workers who might otherwise feel kinda overlooked by standard regulations.
Finally, Section 5, How and When to Vote. Let's go over the logistics. For the exact timeline you need to know, the digital voting window will be opened for you to cast your ballot, and voting officially closes on August 20th. So mark your calendars. That is the firm deadline to make your voice heard in this newly unified electoral system. And honestly, the college has made the actual voting process incredibly streamlined. It takes barely 2 minutes. You just log into your My ACP portal with your standard credentials, click the dedicated election link right there on the homepage, and make your choices. Remember, under the new rules, you are choosing one pharmacist and one pharmacy technician candidate, regardless of your own professional designation.
So, we've explored this historic shift away from geographic districts and analyzed a platform heavily focused on CCP reform for relief workers and IEPG transparency. As the election approaches, Ahmed Abdelfattah's campaign officially invites you to cast your ballot for him for Pharmacist Councillor 5 by that August 20th deadline. With the entire province now choosing together, who will you vote for? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and be sure to review all candidates before casting your vote.